Welcome to the Whistleblower Newsroom. I'm Christina Borgeson. Democratic Senator and Senate Judiciary Committee member Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island just leveled a bombshell charge against the FBI and, by extension, Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Whitehouse wrote a letter asking newly confirmed Attorney General Merrick Garland to review the FBI's investigation of attempted rape charges against Kavanaugh. The FBI investigation, by the way, was run by Kavanaugh's law school classmate, Christopher Wray. Senator Whitehouse wants Attorney General Garland to determine if the FBI's investigation was, quote, fake, rather than a sincere, thorough, and professional one. Whitehouse also mentioned that the FBI failed to follow up on other allegations that required their own investigation. My guest today adds yet another very serious charge to the list of allegations against Kavanaugh. He literally ran into the information he's going to share today after unwittingly stepping into a situation where he survived an assassination attempt and his mother lost her life. A highly successful business executive from Nevada, James Spencer, accidentally uncovered a massive illegal activity involving Saudi funding of Al-Qaeda and 9/11 hijackers via a black market scheme after his U.S. company bought a company in Venezuela that, unbeknownst to him, was part of the scheme. The gates of hell opened up for Spencer when he tried to report it to law enforcement, including the FBI. After that, attempts were made to kill him, in which Spencer says local law enforcement, the FBI, and a United States senator were complicit. After Spencer refused to back down, his elderly mother was taken from his care, sent to a nursing home, where she was abused, eventually to death. When Spencer turned to the courts for help, he ran into a hostile judicial system that included a judge whose appointment was bought and paid for in exchange for his willingness to undermine Spencer's court case. That was when Spencer uncovered the black money judgeship buying operations that evidence from the court system itself indicate involved Brett Kavanaugh. Spencer, by the way, was introduced to me by a retired FBI agent with a long, distinguished career, whom I trust and who called me to ask me to tell Spencer's story. Both of us have seen Spencer's evidence, and it is shocking. With Spencer today is Dr. Nick Williamson, a former member of the board of directors of Jim's U.S. company, who at times lived Spencer's nightmare with him. Williamson has spent hundreds of hours working on Spencer's court cases and is intimately familiar with his story. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So let's start at the beginning. You had a company called Southern Holdings, and you were buying this company called Avestra in Venezuela. Now, what was this company doing, the Venezuelan company?
Venezuelan company was had one of the exclusive licenses to import tobacco into Venezuela, and it had contracts with R.J. Reynolds. And what we did was take over the company because funding had been withdrawn from the providers to the ownership of the company. And so they contacted me and asked if I could restructure the company. As part of the restructuring, we made an arrangement where we would take over the company, and through the Export-Import Bank, we would provide funding upfront for the cigarettes to be purchased from R.J. Reynolds. And that's how it started.
It was a tobacco products company. Okay. Correct. So now, when did you discover that this company, and how did you discover that this company was involved in black marketeering? And explain exactly what it was doing as part of this scheme?
Well, what happened is there's not much humorous to the story, but what happened in this is that Dr. Williamson and I went to Wake Forest University to see a professor over there, a graduate of Wake Forest, their MBA program. And we were going to see a professor over there about signing a team of students, which they have a second-year project to work on to see about opening up markets. Well, the professor, because they used what they called the parallel market, which is another name we've later found out was for smuggling, the professor said that no, he couldn't get his students involved in it because of the danger. And however, he was interested in getting involved in that. And this kind of perplexed Nick and I because we had no idea what he was talking about the danger. So then Nick did some research and came up with what exactly was going on in the parallel market as far as this was basically a euphemism for smuggling. And this is something that we absolutely did not want to be involved in. And so that's really how it became uncovered.
Well, wait a second. But you uncovered this in your own organization.
Right.
But I guess, Nick, can you explain how you discovered it? Go ahead.
Yes. We were interviewing an individual named Ansley Garvin for to be head of Evestra as owned by Southern Holdings, our company. And we indicated to him that he had made it all the way to the final step, and that was he was to make a presentation on what marketing strategies he would use to enhance sales for Evestra in the coming year. And what he did was he laid out a very detailed description of how Evestra's personnel would meet personnel with buyers in Colombia, very close to the border of Colombia. And these buyers would purchase cigarettes by gold at a 10% premium, which would.
You mean they'd buy in exchange for gold, they would purchase cigarettes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And the 10% premium was to compensate us for the trouble that you went to have to trade gold for US dollars. And what happened was this Ansley Garvin had as a main heading of his presentation how to dramatically increase tax-free money for Evestra in the coming year. And tax-free money is of course means smuggling.
Right.
And I saw that in the meeting, and I looked over at Brian, and Jim looked at me, and I signaled to him to please come out in the hall while Garvin was making his presentation. And Brian and I talked, Jim and I talked a while, and we concluded this was smuggling, and it was a real problem, and we had to get our company out of it.
Right.
But that's exactly how we found that out. Now, later, Jim discovered the nuts and bolts of the smuggling activities when he, I think in August of 1999, met with Roy Sheriff, a person who was heading up, owned, somehow was top management for Evestra. And during the meeting in, I think it was October of 1998, Jim met with Banco de Venezuela and also Hugo Chavez, who was at that point in time the nominee for president of Venezuela. Later, we found out that Hugo Chavez's family was soaking the company Ivestra by providing security for the company. Really, it was just money.
Security, yes,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And so Hugo Chavez had a huge interest in the continued operation of Ivestra as it was.
As a smuggling operation.
Yeah, as a smuggling operation.
Wow.
But at that time, Jim and I both have we have pretty extensive academic experience in international knowledge in international business. But candidly, we were somewhat in the beginning stages for learning how cigarettes were actually exported and imported. And at that meeting, where there was Hugo Chavez and people with the Central Bank of Venezuela, they bandied about terms such as the parallel market, the general market, and other such terms. And on their face, these terms sounded innocuous. The general market, the parallel market. We thought they were just other kinds of channels of distribution. Turned out there were euphemisms for cigarette smuggling channels. And that meeting with them, with Banco de Venezuela and with Hugo Chavez, was intended to get their sense on whether we would continue on with the cigarette smuggling activities with Southern Holdings as the owner. Well, but see, Jim didn't and I didn't know about any of these terms. So when we heard them used in conversation, it meant nothing to us. So these other persons, Chavez and Banco de Venezuela, I'm sure, and Jim's sure, came away from the meeting with the sense
you were
that,
okay with it.
No problem. And so, and that was later established in a meeting between Roy Sheriff and personnel with Banco de Venezuela.
So Jim, when did you discover the Saudi angle on this thing?
Well, Roy Sheriff, because he was in need of money,
He was the Ivestra executive?
he was the former Vestra executive.
Right.
Who
Okay.
he had been dealing with some Saudi charities, and they did not want us to deal with the XM Bank, because that would have meant a reporting to XM Bank a lot of information they did not want out. And it turns out the head of security was negotiating, the head of Saudi security was negotiating with Roy Sheriff on a island nearby Venezuela, where the Saudi charities would supplement the money to supply the cigarettes, to supply the funding for the cigarettes, with no questions being asked. And that, at that point in time, all sorts of alarms went off, and we started doing research of exactly who these people were. And at the same point in time, we decided this was not going to be in our interest. We would be violating all sorts of laws.
Well, wait, what is it that the Saudis did? They bought the cigarettes? What is their...
The Saudis were going to supply the money to Ivestra to buy the cigarettes from R.J. Reynolds. Okay? Then the cigarettes would be traded for the gold, and then the percentages would come back where the Saudis would get a percentage of the profits from the cigarettes.
Okay.
And those profits from the Saudi charities were then streamlined through several different banks. We have the listings of them in the paperwork. Several different banks, which that were then supplying the money through Florida banks that were ending up funding the hijackers and their flight schools. Okay, and one of them was Bank of America. And so we, at that point in time, we just said no. We put our interest in the licenses up for sale, and we had a meeting in Las Vegas where we sold our interest and bought interest to a Chinese trading company who were very interested in tobacco.
And didn't mind the smuggling part.
Well, we didn't. We were selling licenses, not
Right. Oh, okay.
the.
All right.
But I'm sure that they wouldn't have minded the smuggling part. But again, what we were doing is solely license selling. And
But Roy Sheriff did not want you to sell those licenses, right?
oh, absolutely not.
Okay.
Because that would cut them out.
Okay.
And so they came up with a plan to oppose us, and we then put it to a vote of the shareholders, and 99% of the shareholders backed us up, and then they hired people to put me on the NCIC as a fleeing felon.
Okay. Who's they? Because there were two, from what I understand, there were two Avestra executives, Roy Sheriff and Ansel Garvin, right?
Right.
Who hired a guy named Steve Hartness,
Right.
who came up with the destroy U.S. Southern Holdings. That's you, and destroy you guys, so this could be stopped. Is that correct?
That's correct. And,
okay, go ahead.
And they had gone to the extent of Hartness was a former police officer who was fired from his position for moral turpitude from the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department.
Okay.
And, so he was very familiar with the NCIC, and he was very familiar on how to bribe people within the police department. And so he went and placed bribed a police officer in Guilford County.
Now this is in South Carolina.
Guilford County, North Carolina.
North Carolina, I'm sorry. And why are we in North Carolina now?
Hartness had connections with sheriff's deputies in North Carolina, and what they were doing was wanted to put me on the NCIC as an armed and wanted fugitive, which had to be.
The NCIC is the criminal database where when they want to go after somebody who's committed a crime, they put them up it, and everybody is flagged so that they can go after you.
Yeah, felony.
Right?
Felony.
Yes, felonies and above. Yes. Okay.
What's interesting is the felony they charged me with was family offense, which was kind of interesting because I never had a family. And what
was the family offense?
Well, that's the problem they have. There was no family offense.
No, but what did they say? What was in the NCIC documentation?
Just a family offense.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Armed and extremely dangerous.
Oh, wow. Okay, so then what happened?
So then what happened is Hartness brought his little traveling fun show down to South Carolina and bribed police officers, and it comes out of Hartness's notebook to go after me. And they were broadcasting that I was wanted in the murder of a recently killed sheriff's deputy in Horry County. And
On top of the family offense?
yes,
Okay.
so I was, yeah. This was,
Okay.
I mean, of course, I was with a police officer, Rodney Lale, who they destroyed his career when he went and told him the truth. I was unaware of any of this, and next thing I knew, I got the former solicitor of Horry County, Ralph Wilson, and he got everything. He went before a judge, and the judge said South Carolina did not follow protocol, that I was not wanted for any felony, and to take me off everything. And then I went to another lawyer up in North Carolina, and they had me taken off everything. And the police ignored it, tracked me down while I was with Rodney, waited till I was working with the former head of the North Carolina, who was Haywood Starling, the former head of North Carolina, Nick?
North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation.
He was working with us and investigating what had gone on. And Haywood had met with the FBI. He couldn't understand why this had been allowed to occur. And we had him down in South Carolina, and he was taking on the case. And as soon as he cleared the state line, they came after me again, despite being cleared by a judge, and set me up with a felony traffic stop in a shopping center, and held me for 8 hours, and proceeded to torture me to try to get me to sign some kind of confession. And
what was the confession? Oh, that you actually murdered this guy?
Something to that effect, yes. That actually it was a release that I would allow myself to be extradited to North Carolina. Now, the problem is one, I had nothing to be extradited for. Second, what were they going to extradite me to? There was no charges on me. So they figured I was going to pay a visit with the alligators in the South Carolina swamps.
Oh.
So they never got anything out of me, but they played Russian roulette with me to try to get me to sign the papers, and this was all documented by witnesses.
What do you mean, like put a gun to your head?
Yeah, spin the chambers and pull the trigger. Yeah, and then they were torturing me with a stun gun, and they had kept me in the car with the temperature at that day, which was in August, at over 120 degrees without air conditioning, water, and I was near death, quite frankly. They then, because they let the cuffs so tight that the recordings show I was begging to get out of the cuffs, it permanently damaged my ulnar nerve. So my right arm and wrist is permanently paralyzed. And I was left 100% disabled from that stop. And so when I got to the jail, they were going to hold a court session to see how long they were going to hold me for. And the judge got the word that no, I was a member of a civil rights organization, and to let me loose. And so he assigned me a court date, and the judge heard the case and said there was no basis to it and let me go.
Well, wait, hold up now.
Okay.
All during this time, nobody in the court system is connecting this false NCIC charge with Roy Sheriff and Ansel Garvin trying to strong arm you, or were they, at this point, what did they want you to do?
Well, at this point, the only thing I could do, and Nick had seen the FBI because they went after him in Greensboro and claimed that he and I were using students at the university as his students as co-eds as a separate prostitution ring. And
So this was pure retaliation at this point. There was nothing, it was just pure retaliation.
pure retaliation.
Oh my
What
God.
they were doing was with me, they had to come up with an explanation, and there was no explanation. And Nick actually went to see the agent in charge at the FBI office in North Carolina in Greensboro, and they told Nick and the former head of the State Bureau of Investigation went to see the FBI agent in charge, and he then told Nick, after he did a little research, he said they weren't going to do anything on this because, and Nick can tell me if the quote is correct, because in the real world, many people speed, but not everybody gets a speeding ticket. So they're not going to get a speeding ticket.
Wait, who isn't?
The people,
Ansel, Garvin, and
the people that put me
so were they? So was, go ahead, Nick. Go ahead, Nick.
Phil Celestini. With the FBI in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Now, why would he protect these guys?
Pardon me?
Why was he protecting these guys?
That's a very good question. We really don't know. We don't know that until today. And I let me follow up on what Jim said. I pursued Celestini over weeks to give me a straight answer regarding why the FBI was not going to pursue this obvious case of civil rights violations under the color of law. And what he said was, in line with what Jim said, everybody speeds, but not everybody gets a speeding ticket. Meaning he was admitting that the people involved on the other side were guilty, but they weren't going to get their speeding ticket.
Well, exactly. Even though torture was involved.
That's right, even torture.
Okay, so now let's, this NCIC business though, it did involve, and we won't say who the senator was, but it did involve a senator's office, did it not?
Eventually, it came down to a current United States senator who was involved with getting records from the NCIC, which were, let's put it, were sanitized.
Why was he getting these records?
We had put in a FOIA request to get them.
Okay.
So we wanted to see exactly what was going on, but this was a follow-up request. We'd already sent another request through Jesse Helms' office, and Jesse Helms produced the records and showed that because they claimed they didn't know who they had at this traffic stop where they paralyzed me, and so we saw that they had that the record did show that they knew who I was.
So wait a second now. I just want to be very clear. You asked you put in a FOIA request because you wanted to see what exactly was on this NCIC document that got you tortured and so on. And you put in the request and you got back some sanitized documents?
Correct. Okay.
And those sanitized documents, what was their connection to the senator's office?
They came through the senator's office.
Oh, They came through the senator's office. Okay. So then you looked at these sanitized documents and you said, well, let's try Senator Jesse Helms.
No, I had the records from Jesse Helms first.
Oh, you had the, oh, now why would the other senator send you sanitized records?
Because we had filed a court case in between for what had happened. And all of a sudden, this was not going to go what they had anticipated. So this other senator who's in on this little network he had been decided to make sure that we didn't get the complete set of records. So we didn't have the evidence we needed in the courtroom.
So why did he have an interest, though, in seeing you destroyed through the court system? Why are these powerful people interested in seeing you destroyed in the court system?
State Budget and Control Board in South Carolina was the insurance carrier for Horry County. The claim we had was a RICO claim, which was treble damages, which were raised it to several $1 million. And the best way to get rid of that is to make our evidence disappear. And so that's when he became actively involved. And not only did he become actively involved.
When you say he, are you talking about the state senator?
I'm talking about U.S. Senator.
U.S. Senator, yes. Okay, that's when he became actively involved? Oh, really?
Yeah. And of course, the State Budget and Control Board controls just about everything in South Carolina. And they had wanted this to go away also. And we have all the documents you can imagine that showed what they were doing and how they did it. And as the years went by, new people were in charge of the FOIA records. And these people weren't aware of the entire cover up. So we got more and more records, including documentation that showed exactly what had been going on. And the records from the FBI, supposedly from the FBI, that went to SLED.
What's SLED?
South Carolina Law Enforcement Division.
Oh, South Carolina Law Enforcement Division. Okay, yeah.
Mark Keel, who's the head of SLED, he knew the FBI could not get involved in this case unless they opened up a full-blown investigation, and they were going to do that. So, because it wasn't to their interest. So what they did is fake the documents as if the FBI had examined the tapes. And the reason we know the documents were faked is that somebody tried to use SLED documents as if they were FBI documents. So the documents were all forged.
By the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division?
Yes.
Oh, my God. Okay.
We also got later on a note confirming that Mark Keel had ordered Captain Caldwell to do this. And that it was from a FOIA. We couldn't believe that.
Now, who's Mark Keel again?
Mark Keel's the head of SLED.
Oh, okay.
Current head of SLED.
Oh.
And
wow.
He was Caldwell was his primary official that handled the forensic research, and Caldwell's the person that forged the records. And he made a notation that was in the file that said he was ordered to do this by Mark Keel. Now,
this sounds like a runaway cover-up because, I mean, if they had, if they had tortured you, okay, because of this one corrupt cop who made this whole thing happen, well, it could have been contained, but it's almost as if all of a sudden, because you were going to get more money because you were tortured, everything came down on you and you had to be destroyed. And now, meantime, as your court case is going along, you tried to report to the FBI and to other people about this Al-Qaeda funding and hijackers funding, right?
So yeah, I started that off before we even filed the case.
What happened with all that?
Well, it's supposed to be, according to what is known as MEOG, which is the FBI's rules, they were supposed to go to the bureau in Washington. But the individual who was supposed to be handling the investigation, by the name of Marsh, who's now deceased, he was the individual who interviewed me in violation of all FBI MEOG principles. And he went to the Budget and Control Board, and he went and killed the stuff before it went to Washington. So it never got to the Washington committee that investigates this. Nobody saw it.
Why?
Confirmation.
Why did he do that?
Because he got a position, as a very lucrative position in the South Carolina government, as the head of security for the South Carolina lottery. That was his payout. Okay.
Yeah, but why? Who ordered him to stop that information from getting to Washington?
We know that two SLED officials sat in on the Civil Rights Review. Okay, when I was being questioned, and that is against the rules. So most likely it was the people with SLED. They got to Marsh and say, "Hey, we can make a deal after you." And even though he didn't have the qualifications, he ended up getting that position.
But it makes no sense to me that it's one thing that they're lying about the NCIC stuff for their friend who had this scheme because you know they were retaliating against you for shutting down the business. But why would the FBI not be critically interested? This is this is before 9/11. Why would they not be critically interested in and why would a South Carolina law enforcement division guy be able to tell an FBI guy, hey, why would he be interested in your information not getting to Washington?
Well, there's a couple of, we looked into that quite a bit. And there was an individual with the FBI who was in the New York office who was in charge of all Al-Qaeda relations. And this individual was on the outs with the current director of the FBI, which wasn't Mueller at the time. And in fact, they did a report.
What, Louis Freeh?
Louis Freeh. Louis Freeh was on the outs with this gentleman, and they did a report on, it wasn't Nightline, it was the other.
It's okay, whatever. They did a report on TV.
They did a report on TV that showed that what happened was Louis Freeh basically fired this guy because he was convinced that the Twin Towers involved Al-Qaeda. And he told Louis Freeh that he was positive when they flew back from the Twin Towers that were blown up in Saudi Arabia. And Louis Freeh had gotten upset at him and wanted to isolate him. So he put him in charge of the New York office of Al-Qaeda. And when he was bringing back one of the witnesses, who was an Arab informer.
Yeah, but this is before 9/11.
That's right. This is right before 9/11. But see, he got transferred to New York the day before 9/11. Okay, the day before 9/11. His first day on the job was when he took command of 9/11. And then what had ordered, Louis Freeh had sent an order down that all information on Al-Qaeda connections was not to be transmitted to Washington. He issued that directive.
Why? That's suspicious. I don't know that.
Well, it's because what we understand what we understand is because he had it in for this FBI hotshot and wanted to make sure that his work didn't go anywhere.
Man, that is really crazy when you consider what happened. But okay, I want to, yeah, go ahead, Nick.
And following on what Jim's saying, uh, Jim and I went to several different FBI agents during a period of, I don't know how long, at least a year or two. And from the MEOG manual that Jim's referencing, the Manual of Informational, Investigative and Operational Guidelines, for any civil rights crime, report of any civil rights crime, which there were many civil rights crimes committed under color of law in our situation. The FBI agent who takes that information is mandated to immediately send that information to the special FBI office in Washington, D.C. that handles all the civil rights crimes and only the civil rights crimes reported to the FBI.
Well, the interesting thing about this is one wonders how interested they were in learning about Saudi funding of 9/11 perpetrators, you know. I mean, this seems to be a recurring theme. I don't know if that was the theme back then, but their disinterest in this is very interesting. I want to, because our time is getting short, I really want to talk about this Kavanaugh connection, which has to do with all your case just kept getting bigger and bigger and messier. So all of a sudden they need a judge in South Carolina, correct? They need a judge who's going to do what they want to do. So explain to me the buying, the judgeship buying, and how that was connected to Kavanaugh, based on the evidence that you found.
Okay. What we know is that $250,000 was the sum that was used to get this individual into position, to be nominated as a
And
federal.
who wanted him in there?
One is the Budget and Control Board of South Carolina. Two is the United States Senator who was involved in this. And three is the various police departments that were involved and had connections with this. And
okay. So he had a whole host of people who wanted him in that job.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And this kind of goes back to what you were asking about. How many people are involved in this? South Carolina has been known to be a receiving point from illicit money out of South America. Okay, they've got airports all over the state that receive planes from South America that are loaded with drug money. It's well known within the state. Now, what they wanted to do is to make this case go away. Nick and I traveled to Washington. We tried to meet with the United States senator that was involved in this, and we had an agreed to appointment, and then they never showed up at his office. And then we had met with Congressman from Greensboro, who Nick and I both knew. What was that congressman's name?
Coble.
Congressman
Howard Coble.
And Coble was very interested. And what happened was that the powers that be got this, all of a sudden the presiding judge in this very complex case, a RICO case, was replaced by this judge who had basically no federal court experience. And we now know how he got appointed. And we even have the minutes from the meeting.
Now, wait. So you're talking about this judge, you're talking about the judge who was supposed to throw your case, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so we have to be very clear, in a straight line here. So who paid for this judge? Where did that money come from?
That money came from from his family, and was and also involved Horry County, who was one of the defendants in this case.
Okay.
And see, Horry County was on the.
And who did his family pay?
We actually have an individual who was in on the transaction, who has provided us with notes that have been verified through handwriting experts to be from the people that she said they were.
Okay.
Or said they were. And they wanted they wanted him put in there, and as compensation for him put in there to get the lifetime appointment, they wanted to make sure this case never got anywhere.
No, I know that, but the judgeship, the cost of the judgeship was $250,000. Where did the family paid that $250,000 to who?
Okay, $200,000 went to the Bush-Cheney contributions, or went through Kavanaugh, because he was in charge of all appointments of district judges. He was picking them at that time, okay, for the Bush-Cheney administration. So he was picking the judges. So they had to have tacit approval from him. The other $50,000 went to the campaign of the United States Senator who was involved.
Okay, this is mind blowing. All right, so I just want to be very clear. So this $250,000, this lawyer's family bought his judgeship, $250,000. $200,000 goes to the Bush-Cheney campaign fund.
Correct.
And $50,000 goes to the United States Senator's campaign fund. And the approval of the approval of the judgeship is Mr. Kavanaugh, who's like, okay, this is a good deal. I'll okay putting him in. And he must, do you think he knew about the transaction, the money transaction?
That I can only describe of what his control over the appointments, and it was supposed to be complete. So if going on the records, and that he had complete control of who was appointed to be a federal district judge, that was part of the system. So, and Kavanaugh would have been in that loop, and it also, this individual, the senator, is part of the Senate Judiciary Committee. So it
right along with White House.
I'm not sure.
Like they sit next to each other at the Senate Judiciary Committee meetings, and White House has no clue about this guy?
I don't think so. I don't know what you know now. We turned this in to the senator from Minnesota, Klobuchar, and the FBI said that they couldn't investigate it because the White House under Trump was limited to only investigation sexual allegations.
What?
Yeah.
What? That doesn't even make any sense.
Well, that was the orders that supposedly came down from the Trump administration and what the FBI reported.
Wait, so you sent it to Klobuchar, and what did you ask her to do?
Well, to turn this over to the FBI and to take appropriate means, because this guy for the Supreme Court had been on the take.
Right.
So we felt this needed to be known. And so then, everything started coming out where
Wait a minute. So White House is right.
Yes.
White House is right, because if the FBI is saying, "Oh, no, we can't include this information in our vetting process of this potential Supreme Court justice, because unless it involves a sexual allegation, then we're not looking at it."
That's correct.
That I'm speechless. Honestly, I'm speechless, because that's what White House was saying when he said, well, it wasn't just the sexual the rape allegations. There are other allegations that you didn't look into, and voila, you are exhibit number one of these allegations.
And everything I've said to you is documented by third parties.
I don't know. And so you have been knocking on the door of the FBI. First of all, they've been complicit in your continuing nightmare, and they don't want to hear your evidence about the 9/11 the 9/11 funding by Saudi charities that you literally ran into like a buzzsaw. Okay. And now they don't want to hear about what you have to say about Kavanaugh's role in these bot judgeships to run a fraudulent courtroom against you.
Correct.
Yeah. You wanted to say something, Nick?
Yeah. An interesting thing complementing Jim's description here is this. South Carolina is one of the few states in this country where there is no statute of limitations.
Oh.
So this is a wild card where if someone commits a criminal act, that criminal act potentially follows that person around the rest of his life or her life. And
but they've destroyed Jim's health. Okay. They've financially decimated him.
Yeah.
Okay. And so far, there's no justice. The justice system won't deal with it from the lowest to the highest levels.
Even though by virtue of there being no statute of limitations, the FBI is fully in a position to bring about charges right now, if the will were there within the FBI.
Well, let me correct that. The FBI is in a position to bring federal charges, but the statute of limitations on the federal charges is still running because the cover-up is still going on. But the state charges are totally active, and both the judge, the senator, and everybody else, including the officers that were involved, are subject to the full extent of the law. And that makes this extremely dangerous, because if someone would take the position and seek it out through a grand jury and give the power, these people could be brought to justice. And that is something they don't want to do, because it can go deep into the State Budget and Control Board and other people that were involved in this.
Well, I think the other thing that you mentioned to me about South Carolina that's kind of shocking, and I think I read in your brief somewhere, in your complaint somewhere, about how you were talking about all the airports and the drug money coming in. You were basically saying that South Carolina is money laundering central.
Correct.
So if it's money laundering central, And that senator has been in office for many, 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 many years. I mean, that's that's the lowest hanging fruit in terms of an investigation I've ever heard of.
If they would go after him, he's not going to keep his mouth shut. He'll cry like a baby.
Oh my God. I mean, your situation is just shocking. It's shocking. And, you know, more and more on this show, I am talking to people like you, people who are good, honest people. You're trying to do business. You buy this business and you run into this buzzsaw. Why? Because you're an honest guy and you're not going to go along with the program. And next thing you know, you find out that this program stretches from Venezuela to South Carolina to Washington to, you know, I mean, it's like, I don't know.
It's like a house of mirrors. You don't know what's real.
Oh, you know what's real. The whole thing is real. Look at you. You know, you're living in that hell every day and no one's coming to your rescue. And I just find that incredibly unconscionable. So I'm going to make sure, I am going to make sure that this show gets to White House's office. And, you know, obviously, maybe I should try and send it to some other senators' offices. What do you think, Nick? Where should I send it?
You're the one on top of the mountain. You understand where the Muppeteers are, and so we would take your choice on that.
I mean, this is just absolutely incredible. And you know, and now the fact too, and when I read this, I think it was the Nation article that I read where they said that there were these 83 ethics complaints against Kavanaugh while he was being considered for Supreme Court justice, and that after he became a Supreme Court justice, all those things went away because you can't go after a Supreme Court justice. Now, what kind of Orwellian hell do we live in where the people who are supposed to be the upholders, the primo upholders of the law of a nation, are themselves not subject to those laws?
Exactly.
You said it.
It's beyond comprehension. Listen,
It is that.
We've come to the end of our time, and I just want to tell you, Jim, I admire your courage, your honesty, your perseverance. I mean, it's amazing, and I know you've been a good friend to him, Nick, a good friend. So keep on keeping on and keep me posted.